This is probably the most exciting panel of the day because it is the last panel of the day. And then the bar opens. All right, you can see everyone's already relaxed, getting giddy. But no, this is a terrific panel that we've assembled to end the day's festivities. I'm particularly proud to say that I work with each of these gentlemen in some capacity, mostly as counsel, and have a long-standing history and can tell you these are some of the best operators in the country, and I'm confident they're going to share with us some very interesting insight as to their operations, how they see the marketplace and the industry and where it's headed. So just brief introductions, and then we're going to dive into it. Right to my left is Ed Schmaltz. Ed is the CEO of Urban Leaf, which is one of the leading retail cannabis chains in California. Ed has been in this industry for a number of years. He was the CEO of Calyx Peak prior to this, and brings a tremendous consumer experience, having been the CEO of FAO Schwartz and COO of Patagonia. Next to Ed is Bob Fireman. Some people consider Bob one of the true pioneers in the industry. Some others consider him one of the dinosaurs of the industry.
Dinosaur.
But
Go with dinosaur. Why?
no, Bob and I go way back. Bob is the CEO and founder of MariMed, multi-state operator in over 6 states, and truly one of the first to be in this industry, and continues to build a successful company after over a decade of being in the industry. Yes. Charlie Rice is the CEO and president of Local Roots. Local Roots is a fairly new operator coming online this year. They have stores in Sturbridge, Marlborough, Framingham, have a grow and a bar, and another store in Fitchburg. And Charlie has been in the industry for a number of years, being an investor in a grow in Vermont, an retail operation which was purchased by Grassroots, in which he stayed on as one of the senior executives. And then Grassroots did their merger with Curaleaf, and he stayed on with Curaleaf, and then found the opportunity to join Local Roots and start to build what is becoming one of the leading companies in Massachusetts. Next to Charlie is Brian Moran. Brian was the CFO up to about a year ago and is now the CEO, co-CEO of Garden Remedies, long-standing good friends and client of mine. They have become really one of the leading operators in Massachusetts. Very exciting company with retail in Melrose, Newton, and Marlborough, and a state-of-the-art grow in Fitchburg. We're going to hear about some of the exciting innovations that under Brian's leadership, Garden Remedies is bringing to the industry in Massachusetts, and hear about their plans beyond that. And rounding us out is Raymond Chang. Raymond is the CEO and founder of Agrify. Agrify is one of the most innovative and new companies offering state-of-the-art equipment, technology that is changing the way operators cultivate. There's a very interesting business model, which we're going to hear about today, that brings higher yields, efficiency to this industry, but also it's a company that wants to accelerate their growth in other areas in cannabis, and it's a very exciting program. Agrify recently went public on NASDAQ and is doing very exciting things, and it's a pleasure to have Raymond with us. So we're going to dive into this. You've got executives from mainstream companies bringing tremendous experience to this industry. We have serial entrepreneurs, we have venture capitalists, we have consumer experts. We're in a highly regulated industry, and how do you turn this into a mainstream industry besides federal legalization, et cetera? And we're going to talk about the things that they try to do to make that happen. And in particular, let's just start with customer acquisition. Something very difficult to do, something you have to differentiate from with all the operators in the industry. And I'm going to start with Brian. Brian, why don't we talk about what you've been doing at Garden Remedies and how you have built such a business and continue to acquire customers and maintain them as well.
Absolutely. So thanks, Frank, and thank you everyone else on the panel. Yeah, Garden Remedies, we're one of the originals. So we were founded back in 2013, one of the first meds, and then we had, I think, the second rec store inside the 495 Beltway in Boston after Netta. So we've been around for a little bit. What we've really done is we focused on our retail focus first, really building out our retail and then building out the product to be able to serve consistently our products to our customers. And then this year allowed us, now that we finally finished our growth in our current building, we're now able to serve other customers, so wholesale customers. So now we have 3 stores fully co-located, med and rec, and then we also have a wholesale department that now is, as of I think this month, we're up to over 80 other dispensaries we're selling to. So it's a really nice, it's gotten us to the scale that we're looking for at Mass, which is great. I would say from a customer acquisition perspective, that's the number one thing we're focused on. Obviously, we're selling predominantly to what we call kind of connoisseurs or cannabis users predominantly. But there's a huge amount of the market that just isn't touching cannabis, but it's interesting. We did an internal study, or I'm sorry, we sponsored a study in Mass. In Mass, adults over 21, 58% of them are either non-users or lapsed users, which means someone hasn't used for 5 years or more. But all 58%, those are all 58% of those people are interested in learning more about cannabis or potentially using. You only have 26% of the actual adult use 21 plus in Mass using cannabis regularly now. So really you're looking at a market that's barely touched. And the customer acquisition piece, the number one thing, and it's something we've all talked about, is education. It's breaking down the scary and explaining to people and showing people how this can be a product that they can use every day in their life in a normal way.
Charlie, how are you guys differentiating yourself in that customer acquisition?
Yeah, it's Brian and I have talked about this. I mean, just playing off the customer acquisition piece. I mean, it's amazing to me that and the stats may have changed a little bit, but we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry that has less than a 10% penetration rate into the general public. So, there's such a massive opportunity for customer acquisition, and I think you do that through differentiated products. I'll talk a little bit about what we do, but in general, I think it's, and it was great, the lunch conversation today, hearing them talk about where the wave analogy was great, and the third wave being brands and finding brands that speak to those consumers, to bring them into the stores, bring them, into cannabis as part of a, kind of wellness or lifestyle, part of their lives. And I think it goes beyond just brands. It's also form factors, creating the products, that are going to appeal to them. I mean, we're seeing it in beverage, in Massachusetts right now. I think once you hit on a form factor that appeals to that new consumer, you can drive customer acquisition in a dispensary. And then once they're in the dispensary, you can have that conversation about education. And it does get confusing, another part of the lunch conversation. I mean, when you start talking about terpenes and cannabinoids, and I mean, it gets overwhelming. But if you can build brands and build, the right kind of, communication with that consumer, it becomes such a bridge to having them become a consumer in the dispensary. So, I mean, one of the things that we do, at Local Roots is we focus on organic cultivation. So we use living soil, which is a little different than, a lot of the cultivation groups in Massachusetts. But I think there are many ways to continue to differentiate and find ways to speak to those new consumers and bring new people into the dispensary.
So Bob, you were truly one of the first players into that, and you've had a lot of time to figure out how to acquire customers, educate them, deal with the stigma. What have you learned over the years that you can share with the audience?
Well, I support everything that Brian and Charlie say about all the new form factors, products. It's almost about opportunity. When Massachusetts opened and there were 2 or 3 dispensaries, attracting customers was easy. Now the question is, with over 100 dispensaries, what are you going to do to bring them into the stores? So being a public multi-state operator, we need to develop products, and I think there's 2 things that stand out. One is trust. You look at our vision and our values is to provide trusted, consistent, precision dose products that someone knows that every time they buy it, they know that the result of what's going to do to affect them. The second is service, the education. But people can go into anyone's dispensaries. They need to know that the quality products are there, and that the sales experience and the education experience is the best that they can do. So with that, we for our marketing team, and we just added the former CMO of Boston Beverage, you need to find products that meet people's needs. You need to give them access to it, and they need to have a consistent result. It's not about the first sale, it's all about the repeated sales.
So you talk about the products, it is a bit overwhelming. So Ed, you're a retail operator, no grow yet. How do you, as Bob said, how do you educate that consumer without overwhelming them? Because everyone's got 1,000 strains and, this kush, that kush. So it's all part of the education process, but our dispensaries generally just having too much SKUs in their place.
Yeah, I think that's right. So we're in California. We have 7 stores, and there's 1,500 brands, and about 1,100 licensed stores and home delivery services, and probably a couple thousand black market stores, which I don't think it's a big problem in California. One thing I really like about our business model is we've been really focused on our SKUs. We try to keep them below 1,000 SKUs a store, so it's a very tight assortment. It can scale, and about 40% of our sales come from our own brand, which may be our superpower because no one else has that, and so we can avoid price competition and discounting and really give our bud tenders deep knowledge of our products, the strains that we're bringing to bear, and surround that with a carefully curated selection of really good brands across a variety of segmented price points. It's a challenge. I mean, the customer does have a lot of choices. We've moved away from the early Cannabis 1.0, events focused, flyer focused, street team focused, much more to a digital marketing model. And it's tough going. It's not easy in digital because of the limitations. Our programmatic ads are working. We're tracking that. Interestingly, in our programmatic advertising, which could be home delivery or online order in-store pickup, 80% of our conversions are customers walking into the stores. So that speaks to they're looking for information, and they want to have that knowledge from the bud tenders. So our top criteria for bud tender recruitment is product knowledge, and we spend a lot of time training them. Whether you're a 55-year-old first-timer or a 27-year-old experienced stoner, you can learn something from our bud tenders and walk out of there with product that's going to meet your needs. But Bob's absolutely right. You got to have that consistent experience time and time again with your customers to build your brand.
Sticking with the retail experience, Brian, have you, looking at competition in the state, and we'll get into nationally as well, get Barb's perspective, how different is that retail experience from the typical consumer experience in an Apple store or, and look, MedMen tried to create the Apple store for cannabis. One can argue they had other issues that didn't make it successful. But talk about the retail experience that you're trying to create and what you think is working or isn't working.
Sure. No, I mean, listen, we're only a couple years into adult use in Mass, so it's still really young here. So the customer, especially in Massachusetts, where it's not California or Oregon, where there was as big of a gray market, illicit market kind of going in. There always was one. There still is one here. But what I would say is the retail experience is the education experience, right? The hardest thing we're having is getting people to walk through that door for the first time because of all the restrictions, and also for the fear of walking through that door. I'm going to be on camera. What if someone I see sees me? Blah, blah, blah. Like, all of those fears are still there. Once you get someone inside, though, the thing that we've found is it can be overwhelming. Too many SKUs and all that. So instead, what you have to do is you almost have to create just an educational atmosphere that allows people to take a step back and assess what they need. Why are they entering that store? Most people that enter that store have a reason. And so what we're essentially attempting to do is, when we get them in that door, easily allow them to figure out the reason that they're there. So create products that give them the impact, the effect, or walk them to the impact or effect that they're choosing, and then give them the opportunity of how would they like to experience that effect. It's not as much right now, the new people that come in, they don't care about the 8,000 strains that we have, right? Those are more for the connoisseur, if you call it, or the more there. The people that walk in that are new are saying, I can't sleep. I was told that cannabis can help me. What can help me with my sleep? That's as simple as they know. And they don't even know a lot of people don't even know the difference between THC and CBD. They just know that one's legal and one's not, right? So what we have to do is take a step back and say, if we finally convince someone to take that step into that retail, when they get in, what's the best way to get in front of them the information they need so they can see this is a safe place where they can ask questions and learn? And I think so what we're gonna do is we're in the process of trying to adjust our retail experiences. We wanna create the in and out for the people that wanna order online, pick up and move. But for the people that are learning and wanna ask questions, we wanna create enough of an opportunity for them to feel comfortable asking those questions and not feel that they're holding people up in line or that they're sounding stupid or anything like that. So it's a different, it needs to be an educational experience.
Bob, you operate in multi-states. Do you see the same patterns on the retail side? Are you trying to create a uniform model where do states vary that you adapt with different store designs, different SKUs, different tastes?
Sure. Famous Boston politician Tip O'Neill said all politics is local. There's something for that in the cannabis industry. Obviously, the initial customers are the stoners that now can legally go to stores. In every market, there's a genre of whether they love flower or edibles. I mean, every state is different. In Rhode Island, it's still 70% flower to edibles. And in Illinois, it's different. And in California, it's different. So the first thing you want to do is identify who your target is and what the location of your retail stores are. And you want to make sure you have a product mix that satisfies the initial customer base. Now you want to create new adapters, and that's where this industry is going. How do we get mothers of 4 that have never smoked or taken an edible? How do we get them in there to know that this is going to help them instead of the pharmaceutical products, something that's going to fix their anxiety or their nausea? And they just want to know that if they try something, it's the same every time, but they want to know that they're not going to be in a fetal position under their table for 8 hours, hoping they lived. So it's trial and error. So in MariMed, we create 2 or 3 different genres, types of looks and feels for the store. And when we're in rural areas, we make it look one way, and urban, depending on the state. So it's local. It's using basic retail strategies that worked in other industries. And you just, when you find the right mix, you want to replicate it and scale it and keep it consistent.
Ed, are you following that same path, or are your stores, from what I've seen, seem pretty uniform in design, but is that changing as you're expanding into different areas in California?
Well, the stores are uniform in design, but the product mix definitely changes. And we'll see as much as a $20 shift in average daily transaction from all the way in the south of San Diego on the Mexican border to a more urban San Diego store or a store up the California coast. So you're looking at demographics. You know, it's anything a retailer would do, right? They're looking at demographics, who's the customer, what's the right product mix that we need to have in the store to meet that demand, what does the competition have, and how are they buying? Are they coming in to the store? Are they ordering for at-home delivery? All those factors come to play.
I want to bring Raymond into the discussion. We're going to talk about brands later, but I want to talk about cultivation and have you share with the audience your journey into Agrify and what Agrify is doing, because it is a unique platform. You're not just the supplier of the equipment, you're a supplier of the technology, you're partnering with these growers. You really are a cultivator, to an extent, although you're traded on NASDAQ, so we're not touching the plant. So if you could, share with us, because it's recently going public, and I think it's a fascinating story, and also how you're changing cultivation from your perspective.
Great. Thank you, Frank. By the way, thank you for organizing this wonderful conference. Really appreciate it. Actually, just sitting here listening to Brian, Charlie, Rob, and Ed really kind of puts a big smile on my face. And the reason for that is I keep hearing the word consistency. Repeat it over and over and over and over and over. And I think, personally, I think that is the biggest problem that we all need to solve. The question is how. And I can say that right now, most of the cultivation facilities out there would never be able to deliver consistency and quality over time. And the reason for that is, just look at this environment, for example. How do we control the environment when you actually have an open HVAC system that it's impossible to dial it in? From one corner to another, it's at least minimum a few degree temperature variation. Lights are shining in all directions, right? And how about humidity, right? So if you can't control the environment, how are you able to deliver consistency results? It's impossible. So our solution is unique because we first recognized the fact that forget about trying to control this macro environment. Let's bring it down to a micro environment, number one. Secondly, instead of looking at this on a square foot basis, let's now look at this on a cubic feet basis, right? We don't have to waste all that vertical space. Third, instead of basically just depending on one master grower that controls all the recipe, everybody is their mercy, let's use data, science, and technology to take over. So our method is essentially figuring out the best grow recipe for any type of genetics. And once we figure out the perfect grow recipe, we use technology, use data and science to perfect and make sure it's repeatable every single time. So let me just kind of give you guys one example. One of our customers, actually out in Nevada, we have seen in the last 20, 30, 40 harvest batches, multiple strains, and we see less than 1% variation in cannabinoids, less than 1/10 of a point variation in terpene. And we're not talking about just one strain, and we're not talking about one harvest or multiple harvests. We're talking about multiple harvests, multiple strains, and still achieving that level of consistency and quality. And that's basically what we're delivering to the industry, and we're hopefully have an opportunity to work with everybody here because we believe that the industry is moving towards the next generation of growth. We need to use data, we need to use science, we have to stop treating this like an art. And that's basically how we intend to attack the industry.
Also, you could just share a little bit about the system itself, because it's mobile, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the best part about it is that the units are essentially imagined, they're like Lego pieces, right? So it's modular. So eventually, for example, if we wanted to have any of the multi-state operator in a post-deregulated environment decide to consolidate all the production facility, our units are movable. Essentially, you unplug, put it on a truck, move it to the new facility, plug it back in, and all the data, all the science, and most importantly, it's the same standard operating procedure, right? So nothing needs to change. And that's basically how our units are built.
Charlie, can you tell us about your philosophy, strategy on grow? You mentioned organic, indoor. I know you're looking at outdoor grow as well in some sort of.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a mix. So you mentioned earlier we have an indoor facility in Framingham. Our Barrie is the location in Central Mass where we have outdoor and we utilize 4-season greenhouse. So our cultivators have been successful in greenhouse grow operations in multiple states. I think obviously the living soil method that they use using single source natural inputs to kind of maintain that organic flower product. They love the use of natural sunlight in that greenhouse environment to kind of express the full terpene and cannabinoid profiles of the plant. But I also think, even going to extraction and growing for biomass, as we move, and we're seeing the industry move more towards solventless extraction and creating products that maintain that, profile of the plant and those, terpene and cannabinoid characteristics. So I think, and I do appreciate and would love to talk about the benefits of their product, because consistency, as everyone's talked about, is the hardest part. It's even harder, using an organic living soil method. But we feel strongly that the types of products and the brands we're trying to create, part of that is making sure we bring the full characteristics of the plant through that whole process, and that presents itself in the final product to the consumer.
Ryan, I know that Garden Remedies has put a lot of money into their grow operations. Maybe you can tell us your strategy there as well.
Yeah, we finished I think we're on phase 6 of our build out now, which is actually the final build out of our building. We literally had to take our employee break room and turn it into a vault because we were running out of space. So this 85,000 square foot building is built. But what we actually now have a lot of different grow mediums, and we're going to be consolidating them. So our original rooms were all soil. I will say, frankly, we ship in our soil from Oregon. That's the only soil that we've found that we can consistently get that won't taint our flower. It's brutal, and it's brutal from a sustainability perspective, from a cost perspective. During COVID, it was brutal from an infrastructure perspective. Our second half of our grow that we opened this year is hydroponic, and we're finding that's been phenomenal. Actually, we're finding our plants like it better. We're able to grow more strains that we weren't able to grow before, because a lot of our strains really love to take the nasties out of the soil, so it's pretty difficult to do. So our hydroponics have been great, and then similar to what Charlie's doing, we're going to have our first outdoor grow next season. So our view is our people can grow in anything, we know that, but I agree that the consistency is important. What we're seeing is the hydro has been a lot more consistent, so that's been helpful for us. The other thing we're seeing with it is the simplification of recipes. We used to have, say, 5 different recipes, different stages, and we've been able to bring that down as well. And that's just been able to, I would say from a cultivation perspective, my focus, or anyone that's new on or looking about doing cultivation right now, better think about your energy use, because right now it's not, Commissioner Hoffman's not here, so it's not something that we're getting dinged for, if you will, but it's coming. I think there was a statistic that said 10% of Massachusetts industrial electricity is now coming from cannabis. That's a massive amount of our electricity. So it's going to come at some point. So you need to think about energy usage. The other thing you need to think about is just general usage of any of your supplies. Sustainability is going to be something that's important as well. So from our view, we're trying to be more consistent. I agree that more science is important to get consistent. Same thing with your cuts, your cloning, tissue culture. All these things are things that have been developed, say, in other industries that people are starting to employ more and more in cannabis, and it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Bob, can you
Sure.
chime in, and also with multiple grows and consistency, what you're experiencing?
At Maramed, we've developed over 300,000 feet of cultivation, production, multiple states. And I think what you're hearing here is the wide spectrum of how do we get to a result and what's the final product that you're trying to do. So at Agrify, it's automation. He's taken the human element out, and he's tried to control environments in an automated, multifaceted way, which everybody else is trying to do the same thing. You need to control the HVAC and the environment, the humidity, all of that has to be the consistent. So we've gone from 600-foot rooms to 1,300-foot rooms. Every room is a controlled environment. One room doesn't affect the other, and you have to have the consistency. I think, but at the end of the other spectrum, this is agriculture. All of our pharmaceutical products, everything that we get in the drugstores, everything originally came from plants. And plants is unique. So I started another company, Sky Vegetables, and we were growing lettuce and arugula on top of roofs So I looked at multi-stacks from Japan with factory farms. They grow lettuce 11 stacks deep. But how does it taste? At the end of the day, somewhere between automation, at Maramed, my guys say we're craft growers at scale. My growers love every plant. They watch every plant, they care about it, and they believe that that sort of attention will result in the best products. And our Nature's Heritage brand seems to be one of the highest sellers here in Massachusetts, Maryland, Delaware, and other places. So I think there's a wide range of getting it done, consistency, but I'd like to think that Raymond's challenge is to put the love into the machines. And that's a big challenge.
Well, in full transparency, Bob, I think you also figured out that the pound of weed versus a pound of cabbage was a big difference.
I got $6 a pound for lettuce, Boston did, and we get 4,300, if not more. It's much easier.
Ed, do you find it, you're buying these products, and are you finding that the consumer is differentiating from, as Charlie was talking about, organic, indoor grown, outdoor grown? I mean, how is that factoring into your capturing the consumer and what they're looking for?
Yeah, I would say not yet. It's starting, right? The segmentation is starting to occur. For better or worse, the customer, high THC. That's what they want. And I think most people here know that's not the be all and end all. It's like saying, I'd like my wine with the highest alcohol. Okay, but it may not be the best taste. It's the combination of THC, CBD, and then the terpene profile that an OG Kush at 18% THC can have profound effects and crush a 32% strain. So I guess a more sophisticated customer comes in knowing how their body reacts to THC and terpenes, and they're looking for that. You're seeing a lot of marketing sun-grown. You can't quite claim the organic because it's a federal label, but it still appears. People are trying to differentiate among their grow techniques. The stratification is outdoor at the bottom shelf, greenhouse mid-shelf, and indoor at the top shelf. I do think, as a Monsanto scientist told me, I think here, 2018, he said cannabis is a plant, it's not a crop. And when it becomes a crop, you're going to have a 4 to 10x increase in yields. But as Bob said, what's that going to taste like? Maybe that'll be all for extraction. So I think there is definitely coming